In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up the Google Classroom Submissions Analyzer for your domain. Please note, this video is intended for IT system administrators and should not be viewed by general public. You can watch it if you want to learn how it works, but it's just not intended for you, as this involves quite a bit of advanced setup. First, just to cover what the app does, it's a very simple little app here. You pop in your email on this website and hit request data. It'll spin here for a minute. If the user navigates off the page at this point, it won't break anything, but it just also won't do anything beneficial either. Once it's done spinning here, it'll load onto another screen that says their request has been received. And once the script is done running, they will have a file shared with them. You can go ahead and open this shared Google Drive file, and I recommend opening it with Google Sheets. And once the assignment is open, you'll see on the first column will be a bunch of student emails that I've had to censor. There is the number of assignments the student has completed, the number of assignments they have been assigned, what percentage the complete is of the max, what course of yours that student is enrolled in, a list of all of their missing assignments, and a list of all their completed assignments. It is automatically sorted by the percentage done column at the start. So now that you've seen what the output of this web app is, it should be hopefully kind of obvious what the benefit of this system is. But basically the situation that we ran into was a lot of our teachers were having issues with keeping up with just the sheer amount of students they were trying to keep track of in terms of who was actually doing their Google Classroom work and who was not. So this gives teachers just a one-click, ready-to-go just list where they can just email off a bunch of kids and say, hey, you're not doing your work, what's up? And hopefully that'll give the teachers a little bit of an easier time trying to keep up with all of the kids that they have working in their classes, and it'll make it easier for them to know who's doing their work. So before we get into the how to install portion of this video, I do want to take a second just to talk about some of the limitations. Your output in this is going to be a CSV file. It's not going to be pretty. I'm sorry, that wasn't a development priority, so that's just the truth of the matter there. My goal was to get you some powerful data and get it to you fast, so I haven't yet built something pretty. If we keep using this after coronavirus, maybe I'll have something like that, but for right now, it's ugly. There are a couple of security ramifications I do want to point out. Since you are running your own server on this is data you already have access to, but you will be storing student data in a new location. So make sure that you keep any passwords, SSH keys, all of that well protected, same as you would for anything else that holds sensitive data. That said, this does not expose your data to any third parties. This is completely open source. You are more than welcome to review the code, and in fact, I would encourage that you do review the code, but I have no access to your data in any way. That also means I can't help as easily if you have an error, but I would rather that we do not expose student data to third parties, as, you know, that might violate like FERPA or COPPA or SEPA or any one of the federal laws regarding student privacy. So that's why I don't have this set up as, okay, here's a website and any teacher from any district can pop in. This does require a domain administrator to set it up. That said, those of you who are domain administrators, I'm sorry in advance. Part of the install script does disable SE Linux. I haven't had a good chance to figure out how that works well enough in order to get this working with SE Linux enabled. If you know how to do that, please submit a pull request. I would love to implement that, but just throwing that out there for those of you who have very strict IT security policies, SE Linux will be disabled by this install. Last but not least, when we are creating everything we need in the Google Developer Console, as far as I'm aware, our permissions must be granted by a domain administrator account. I haven't had a lot of time to test things further, but if you're uncomfortable with that, please create a service account with the appropriate permissions. And while we're on that topic, please do not co-host this with anything else, unless you are 100% sure you know exactly what you're doing. This server is not designed to be used in a multi-tenant environment. It is not designed to be used as anything but a standalone CentOS 8 server. The script that runs to install this may disrupt anything else you have running on that server, so please don't run this on a production server. Please run this on a new VM. Thank you. With all of that said, let's go ahead and get started on the installation process. Before you begin, it is very important to note that you must have a public-facing IP available for this web server, and both ports 80 and 443 TCP must be allowed through your firewall and allowed to access this web server. Please complete that before following along with the rest of the guide. Unfortunately, I can't show you how to do that because your configuration will likely be very different than mine. Once you have a public IP available with those ports open, first thing you're going to want to do from there is go to console.developers.google.com. And I already have quite a few projects created here. I'm going to select New Project. I'm going to name this project Google Classroom Submissions, leaving the rest default. It will take a minute for it to finish creating this project. Once we see that it is completed, we can hit View Project on that notification, and that'll give us some nice information about it, but most of what we're concerned about is we're going to go to the APIs overview, and we're going to enable APIs and services. First, we're going to search for the Google Drive API, and we'll enable that. We'll then go back to the API library. And we'll enable the admin SDK. We'll go back to the library one more time. And this time we're going to enable the Classroom API for this project. You're going to see at the top it says that we might need credentials. Go ahead and hit on Create Credentials. At this point, we'll create a client ID, which will then ask us to actually go back and configure our consent screen. Select Internal and hit Create. On this consent screen, we'll then name this Submission Analyzer or something to that effect. Scroll down and hit Save. And now we'll be allowed to make that. So we can go back to our credentials, hit Create OAuth Client ID. Our application type is going to be Other, and hit Create. You can hit OK right there, and we can see our client that we've just created with today's date on it. And hit the little download button, and that will download our client secret.json. Now that we've downloaded our client secret, we're going to go ahead and prepare the virtual machine that we need. We'll need a CentOS 8 server with GUI. The GUI will be important later, so unfortunately those of you who love command line, we can't do this all on command line, as we do have to be able to run a couple of windows, mostly just for being able to authenticate our Google Classroom API credentials. So there might be a way around that, but I don't know it, so is what it is on this one. You only need very minimal specs for that server. For me, it's running fine with a single CPU core, 2 gigs of RAM, and a 20 gig hard drive. Once you've got that server in the process of being spun up, you will need to create an account called GCS, all lowercase, that is Golf Charlie Sierra. So go ahead and make sure you include an administrative account using those credentials. The script does assume that an account named GCS exists, and so that is a hard requirement. Once you've got that VM ready, you can go ahead and log into the GCS account on that VM. Now that you're logged into that account, you can go ahead and open up a terminal. And I'm going to fire up WinSCP over here. And with WinSCP, I'm going to start a new session, and I'm going to connect to the local IP of that CentOS server that we just made. And I'm going to connect with the GCS account that we created. And in the home folder of that GCS account, I'm going to add that client secret file that we've created. With that done, I can close WinSCP, and then I'm going to pull up the Git repo. I'm going to clone with a HTTPS and copy that link. And the link to this repo is in the description of this video. And then over on our VM, in the terminal, I am going to do su to change to root. I'm going to do yum-y git yum-y install git. And this is going to install Git onto our server, and it's going to automatically accept anytime it is prompted for a confirmation. With that done, unfortunately I just remembered I'm in a VMware console window right now, so I don't get to copy and paste. So I'm going to manually type in git clone https://github.com/rzmeeker/Google Classroom Submissions Analyzer. Once that clone is complete, I can go ahead and close out that GitHub window. I'm then going to cd into that Google Classroom Submissions Analyzer folder. Now that we're in the directory, we're going to make the install script executable. So we're going to do a chmod +x on the nginx install shell script. And then we're going to do /nginx install.shell. And this is our install script. And you can see right there, it's gone, oh no, credentials aren't found. Why aren't credentials found? Let's check. Because our credentials file isn't named credentials. So what I did was I did a cd ... to navigate up one directory, and I am going to rename using the mv command. I'm going to start typing in a client here, and I'll hit tab to autocomplete. And I'll rename that file to credentials.json. I can cd back into our project directory. And once again, / run the script. It's now found credentials. It'll now prompt for a host name for your domain. You do need a DNS record pointing at this site. Just one A record is all you need. In my case, I'm going to be using my dev domain. And if your first input had a www in it, go ahead and remove that in the second prompt. If you already didn't have that, just use the exact same thing and put in your email. This install script will take a little bit to run, and it is not fully unattended. you will need to keep an eye on this. Once you get to this part, it is in the process of making a new SSL cert request. So go ahead and fill out these prompts. And this part will take it a minute. This is actually generating the SSL cert, and we're using some very safe things, so it takes it a minute. We'll get another prompt to install some stuff here. Just hit yes. This is for installing Let's Encrypt CertBot Auto, sponsored by the Electronic Frontier Foundation, Electronic Freedom Foundation? It's EFF. Electronic Frontier Foundation. These guys, they do great work. If you want to sign up for the EFF's newsletter, you can hit Y here. If not, you can hit N for no. This part is important. If you did everything right, you will see, congratulations, your certificate and chain have been saved at this address. If something has gone wrong, it will say that it's failed and you will have things to fix. Once that has done, assuming everything is done correctly, it is going to ask you to sign in to continue to Submission Analyzer in a Firefox window. And this part must be done with the account that created your credentials earlier. This is where you're going to actually grant all of those permissions for this app. So it will need to be able to have full access to your domain so that anyone can run this. This data will not leave your domain. That's why this is set up this way. So all of these permissions are things your account as a domain administrator already has access to, but I do want to just take a second to stress these are the things that permission will be granted for. It's going to be able to view coursework and grades in Google Classroom. It'll be able to view your coursework and grades in Google Classroom. It'll view your Google Classroom rosters and your classes. It's going to pop up another tab here. Choose to continue with the same account. It needs to be able to view users on your domain to look up emails. And it's going to give you one more prompt here. And this is for it being able to share the output with users in your domain. Once those are all done, you can close the Firefox window. And we can scroll our output down. And at this point, we should be good to go. So I'm going to type in that same domain that I put in during those prompts, and you can see here we have the Classroom Analyzer. And if I put in that request data, it will do exactly the same thing. And after that minute or so of waiting, same as before, we'll get that same output that we saw last time. I'm going to walk through a couple of the troubleshooting steps that you may need if you run into problems. There are a couple of key things for you to know. The first is where the application logs are being stored. You can use this to keep track of who's making requests if a user reports that they never got their output. So for this one, since I'm already logged in as root, I won't need sudo, but I can go ahead and do a tail-f var log uwsgi/app.log. This will give me a real-time view of the output as stuff is being done. So if I go to a split screen here, sorry about the dog, but if I do that request data, you can see what this is doing in real time. And I'll go ahead and cancel that command out. There are two services running that we care about on this server. And we can do systemctl status to check their status. Those services are Nginx, which we can see is running, and one that's just called app. App is the systemd unit that controls the actual logic of our application. Nginx is just proxying the UWSGI actual server that's doing all the actual work and running our Python scripts. So if you need to make a change to the code base, then what you would want to do is a systemctl restart app, and that'll reload all of those changes you've made to the Python script. And if you need to restart Nginx because it's just not loading any web pages, then it's just systemctl restart Nginx. Pretty straightforward. One thing to keep in mind is that at the timing of this video, I have not implemented any kind of log pruning. So on occasion, you may want to do a cd var log UWSGI, and I'm just going to do an lsal and check. You can see there it's 11,661. I think that's bits. So it's like, it's either bits or bytes, but either way, it's like 11 kilobytes. It's not a very large file yet, but it's been running for a few seconds. So if you didn't give this machine a whole lot of disk space, if you run into a disk full error, I would just blow out that app.log and make a new blank one. If we wanted to do that, it would just be an rm var log UWSGI app.log. We'll say yes, and then we're going to do touch var log UWSGI app.log, and then we're going to change the owner of that file to Nginx so that it can write to it. And that will give us a 0-byte log file. So there are probably more elegant ways to do that, but that way will work if that log file grows to a behemoth size. As always, this is a very early stage of development software. I wanted to get this out to you guys just so that it might be of use to you. So if you need any help, feel free to reach out to me. I will put my work email on screen right now for those of you who've made it to the end and actually watched all of this. That is in that terminal window on screen. I make no promises with this software. This is something I developed for us, for internal use, but I wanted to make this available in case other domains felt a benefit from this software could be achieved. So if you think it's useful for you, great. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for trying it out. Hope it helps, and good luck with coronavirus. Godspeed.